Welcome back everyone to Gotcha Interact. Today we're going to be talking about the state of Cryo, looking at the past, looking at the future, looking at the present, kind of what's going on here. So we're just going to jump right into it. The first thing we want to talk about really is kind of the past. Now, looking at Cryo in general, it's just in a weird state right now. In the past, we've had Ayaka with the freeze teams and Ganyu kind of with a similar idea, even throwing in with some other, trying to throw some other characters in there for some, melts and whatnot. But it was very, very difficult. And, what we've kind of come to see over time as well, then we got Shenhe, which really helped that freeze team. But once again, now that we've kind of pushed a little bit further into the present, those teams just don't have as much damage, purely probably because of scaling and whatnot, but also the supports. If we look at some of the characters we have now in terms of supports, we have characters like Citlali that purely help every other element besides, or help the other elements to create reactions besides the Cryo specific characters. Citlali buffs those Pyro and Hydro characters for freeze and melt teams rather than those Cryo characters, and actually helps them do more damage. Whereas characters in the past have helped more Cryo focused characters like Shenhe. Now, there are other characters that are just purely good for other teams. We have plenty of other characters that have been kind of revitalized in the Cryo element. Characters like Diona, Layla, those characters are kind of helping other teams, like Chaska, for instance. But what we're consistently seeing, even Charlotte with the Neuvillette and Farina team, what we're seeing is that Cryo isn't really for itself. It's just for everybody else. So, I don't know, Rift, what do you think? Because honestly, that's where I see the state of Cryo right now, is that we're just in a state right now where even our DPSs are solely focused on themselves, and the supports don't even help them at all.
Yeah, like you said, I think that's the thing. Supports aren't the problem. It's that every Cryo DPS arguably just is kind of turning into either a mono Cryo team or just at least up until a recent point can't effectively and consistently do a melt team, because I mean obviously Cryo, at least in theory, is going to do its best damage in melt teams. And too many times, that's the thing that's going on, where Wriothesley's best team is a melt team, and that's good. But kind of like Vixen was saying, Citlali's helping everything but the Cryo department. And it's funny because she is a Cryo kind of character, so it's kind of ironic. But yeah, when you do look at the roster, it's just helping anything but the Cryo department. Even one of those reactions that Cryo's involved in, which is Superconduct, is helping something that's already just not even good in and of itself. So all the things Cryo is involved in, this kind of gets to one of the points I had written down. A lot of the things that Cryo is involved in, either just one, aren't powerful, because it's just not part of the meta, like aka freeze. And number two, just may not be helpful for Cryo in and of itself. Until we see a character maybe that would specifically buff either some of these other types of reaction teams that just aren't meta because they just aren't good in and of themselves, like freeze, because of the issue that, well, you can't freeze most bosses. It's not an amplifying reaction. It's really just straight damage. Freeze isn't doing anything to actually amplify Cryo damage. The closest thing we have to that is in Blizzard Strayer, where, oh, you get more crit rate if they're affected by Cryo, and if they're frozen, even more crit rate. But things like Marshazé give it in a much more consistent way. Obsidian Codex for those Night Soul characters, it's a much more consistent crit rate buff that allows you to then focus more into maybe crit damage or just other types of buffing, whatever they scale on, other supports, etc.
Have you or a loved one been a victim to the losing to Chi-Chi syndrome? If so, you are qualified for benefits from today's sponsor, LootBar. LootBar is an online top-up platform that allows you to purchase Genesis crystals for a cheaper price than you see in-game. The main reason LootBar is safe to use is because they only need your UID and what server you play on. This way, those emails and passwords are completely safe. If you do happen to have any possible issues, LootBar is 24/7 live chat support that you can use to fix any problems you may have. LootBar also supports plenty of other games and in-game currencies besides just Genshin Impact, so go ahead and check out those other games that LootBar supports. Your delivery is guaranteed within 30 minutes of purchase, and usually we've seen it within a couple of minutes, sometimes even 30 seconds. There are plenty of other creators that have and still do endorse LootBar, including ourselves, so if you need some extra credibility, here you go. But do you need to see a little bit more than a few sponsored ads? Go ahead and check out the almost 30,000 reviews that LootBar has on their site. So what are you waiting for today? Go ahead and check the links in the description or the pinned comment to check out LootBar today and start saving. Thank you again for LootBar for sponsoring this video, and now back to the video.
The main issue is that Cryo needs something that specifically buffs it. And yes, we have Shenhe. Shenhe is something that there's something there, right? We need a little bit more than that. Something that's going to take Cryo and be like, all right, I'm going to really amplify your damage without being too incredibly niche. And I think also Sitlolly was a kind of move in that direction, just still not focused enough on Cryo itself.
I actually kind of similarly agree and disagree. The thing that I think the issue is you have someone like Shenhe that helps other Cryo characters, like Ayaka. Like you said, though, and I agree with in a sense that you have characters like teams like Freeze that absolutely do nothing. Consider it just like what you did with Overload. Just give someone like that, like maybe, and it's not Shenhe's fault necessarily, because the DPS, Ayaka, and even Ganyu, just are behind in terms of what they want to actually do. For instance, Ayaka goes way better into the idea of Freeze, her kit does, and her pieces usually normally kind of follow that route. Now, I know people are going to be like, well, at that point, just throw her into a melt team, which is totally fine. The problem is that the Sitlolly you have is not helping Cryo characters do melt damage. They're helping Pyro characters do melt damage, and they're helping Hydro characters do freeze damage. So no matter what, Sitlolly is not helpful. Which is why, in the future, talking about that now, it looks like hopefully we really just need, if we want a Cryo character to do damage, we need either an extremely good support that's gonna insanely buff characters like Shevers that have a huge, great buff to the Electro and, that type of reaction, whether it be freeze or whatever in the future with that type of character, or we have an extremely strong DPS that's purely just strong because of their scalings and because of their stats and because of what they can do as a character combined with their artifact set. That's
kind of
really
like a
what it
Navia
comes down
type
to.
character.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna hit really hard.
Exactly. You just have to hit hard. And then looking a little bit into the future, we have this new 4-piece set, which is going to increase cryo damage bonus by 2 in the 2-piece set. And then the 4-piece set states that when the character equipping has 0 energy and normal attack damage is increased by 60% and elemental burst damage is increased by 60% after the equipping character deals normal attack damage, the elemental burst effect will stop applying. And then when you do burst damage, the normal attack damage will stop, that buff will stop applying, and it can be triggered off field. Now, I think that the biggest thing to keep in mind here is that, hopefully a character like Skirk in the future, that's kind of what I think this is leaning towards, and even if it's not Skirk, hopefully it's another character that just does a lot of cryo damage. We just need someone extremely strong. That's going to bring somebody like Shenhe back into play. It's going to bring some of these other things into play. That's why, though, having a support like Sitlolly was really, really good, though, for the entirety of all the elements that she was helping. For instance, it didn't just help the new characters like Mawika, it helped characters like Arlecchino, it helped characters like Novelette, with, obviously, you could technically throw her in that team and increase his damage. You could throw that with characters like Hu Tao, Diluc, and Yoimiya, helped all those old characters. So if you throw a really strong support in there, you can help the entire Cryo cast by having a really strong support for the future. But right now, it only seems like we're really only going to be helping, really, hopefully, this future character with Skirk.
Yeah, and I think bringing up Skirk, we kind of all know now that, hey, that's coming up in the future. We have this new artifact set, so there's some promise there, and we're all really looking forward to it. She's got to be a powerful character. I mean, look where she's at in the lore. I mean, she freaking tossed Child back into the... She's got to be powerful, right? With that said, I think another thing to bring up is she going to have another character that she's going to work really, really well with? Is that going to be another 5-star? Is it going to be a 4-star? There's that other character I know people have talked about in the kind of that roster of silhouettes that people talk about. Oh, all these unreleased characters. Who are they? And at this point, we actually know pretty much all of them. And I think there's one, maybe it's Dahlia, which that gets really speculative, what he's even going to be and all of that. But some people say he's Hydro. Some people say he's maybe just another Cryo or whatever. The question would be, is he going to be the support for Skirk? What is going to be the support for Skirk is the question I'm posing here. There could be another character that works with that, and Skirk's going to be amazing. I think she's going to be amazing anyways, but there's got to be some kind of support to go with that, to sell with that. That would only make sense. I mean, we saw that with Kanish and Emily. They released Emily first, and then Kanish came out as well. That has to do with the same gimmick, and they do really well together. They don't have to be together, but they do really well together. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about, because I think that's another talking point, actually. Right now, Cryo, just when you try to do melt stuff, for Cryo specifically, not Pyro, you want Cryo to do melting. Yes, there's Risley. You can do some things with Ayaka, Ganyu melt. The issue people run into is consistency, though, right? Why isn't there as much consistency issues with things like Vaporize or reverse melting? Like, that's a valid question. The thing with Hydro and Pyro right now, they've never really been in a sorry state that Cryo has been in, because for Hydro, Vaporize isn't their only option. Not only is it consistent, there's other options to use that are actually really good. Like you can go into Bloom teams, and that opens up a whole new world of teams you can do, and just reactions, and there's many other things. For Pyro, yes, you have Melt, but there's other things, and especially Burning really opened up with a new character in Emily and Kanish that previously no one wanted to do Burning before because it makes no sense. Overload was the same thing. Overload really didn't do anything until we had Shevers. Right now, Freeze doesn't really do anything, but perhaps until we get a new character. So it could be the same kind of, quote, narrative if you see that progression. We just haven't seen that yet. A good support for a physical team. We thought that would be Mika. We need something better than that. So I guess you can kind of see the trend I'm talking about here. And with Snezhnaya being the next nation, I feel like that really could happen. Number one, we're getting Skirk near the end of Natlan, but also getting into Snezhnaya really should be hoping for something new that would really just help Cryo as a whole in general. Not just the new cast being good, but something that's going to help the element as a whole.
I think alongside of that, like you're saying, we just need a new team. Because once again, look at what Shevers did to open up Overload in and of itself. Help Electro and Pyro characters. Look at what Sitlali did to open up the previous cast that maybe was in the past not exceptionally well. Look at the new numbers that they were able to increase with. So all it takes is that one breakthrough of either the DPS to help the current supports, or the supports to help the current DPSs to then increase. So I think that's all it takes, is one or two characters. And once again, this 4-star like Dahlia could actually be extremely helpful. Maybe it's only good for Skirk. But once again, I think all it takes is that if you don't have maybe Dahlia or whatever, maybe Shenhe does take a good placement as it would as well. But the rest of the characters in Cryocast are more or less just like centrally focused to just help themselves. You know, I'm a really good shielder. Okay, but you don't do anything for Cryo. Okay, well, I'm a really good helper for Melt, but only for Pyro and Hydro. Okay, well, you're not that helpful for me because I need Cryo help. And then you have someone like Shenhe, who's good character, but the DPSs aren't as strong as the current DPSs, so she falls off the way as well, and Freeze is absolutely useless, so that's also trash. I think, honestly, even if you find something like Freeze in the future, let's say Dahlia is a Cryo character, or even if she is a Hydro character, or he or she or whatever is a Cryo character or Hydro character, either way, if you go into a Freeze help there, you have Shenhe, you have Skirk, or the new Cryo DPS, and you have Dahlia, who's either Cryo or Hydro, and you could throw in Farina in there. You already have an extremely strong cast. So no matter what, you've already got extremely good characters to make it. It's just missing like one or two pieces of the puzzle that I think are going to open everything up. Well, that's everything we've got talking about kind of everything in this video. If you guys did like the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Let us know what you guys think about Cryo right now. Hopefully in the future, what you guys are looking for. If you guys even care about Cryo, I totally understand if you don't. But especially with Snezhnaya coming up in the not so near future, let us know what you guys think down below. Thank you again for watching the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.